I had an experience lately that I've never had in quite the same way before, and that experience taught me 5 very valuable lessons about faith and life that I think you can benefit from as well. Now, the backstory is my mom's husband passed away after a fairly short time being diagnosed with cancer, and the new experience was not that I haven't had anyone die that I was close to before. As a pastor, I've been around death more than the average person, but this was someone I was close to and was literally with him from the time of finding out that he was at the point of death all the way up until that time, and I was there to watch the entire process unfold. So one of my passions in life and ministry is to take the things we've heard from in the Christian message beyond the cliches into real life, because I would say the primary reason that I believe the Christian message is that it matches life and reality as we experience it better than any other worldview I know of, and this is one example of that. So while these lessons may be things you've heard of before, and I think they will be, I have a little more velocity behind my conviction now, because being on the edge of death is where life is put into perspective unlike any other place. It's humbling and it's unavoidable, and it teaches what really truly matters. So, lesson number 1 from the edge of death is this: live actively in light of the inevitability. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be morbid and go around thinking about death all the time, but you need to embrace, not run away from, the fundamental fact that you're going to end. This is not a scare tactic. It's a reality tactic. The fact that you will end should be a motivator to align yourself with what matters most. My stepdad has been in my life since I was in college, which may or may not have been a few decades ago. And he's just like anyone else. He lived, he worked, he laughed, he did things. He did life day by day, but as those days went by, the inevitable showed up. And although he was 81 years old, he knew his years were limited. He didn't think that they would be as limited as they actually turned out to be. He said to me from his deathbed, I'm not sad, but I am disappointed because I had things I wanted to do. Now, the Bible says the world in its present form is passing away. Now, that's a blunt truth bomb that ought to be taken and digested as a vital part of your personal DNA. Since that's true, how should I live right now? Which leads me to the second lesson from the edge of death, and it's this: act while you can. The late, great John Lennon said, "Life is what happens to you while you're making other plans." Life and health are the easiest blessings to take for granted, but they are not guaranteed to always be there. Are you acting today in a way that will add up to the kinds of things that you want to see in your life 1 year from now, 10 years from now, or by the time you're 81? To my stepdad's credit, he was one of the hardest working people I've ever seen. He was a builder by trade and was doing active construction up until he was diagnosed with cancer just a few weeks before he died. He was active building, he had plans, he was doing the things that were important to him up until the moment that he simply couldn't do it. How about you? The Bible says all hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. Are you daydreaming or are you acting? Which life are you waiting for? On any given day, you can make some kind of move towards the things that matter and what you're passionate about. Don't wait. If you have your health and you have your life today, act, go, do, be, and learn. Number 3, nurture your relationships. Now, my stepdad got to the point where he literally didn't have the strength to walk across the room, even get out of bed. And what mattered most at that moment was absolutely his loved ones. He had the opportunity to sit down with numerous friends and family members, and you could tell on a pure, raw, meaning and emotional level, this is what meant the most of all. See, the Bible places love and relationships at the very center of reality itself. The Bible says that God is love. So the maker of all things is love itself at his very essence, and he says love him and love each other as the highest priority. Now, we hear that, but we often don't practice that. Other priorities get in the way, but I can guarantee you this: when you're at the edge of death, you will think of God and others in your life, and if that's the value that's going to be at the end, why would you not put it in your life as a daily practice right now? Fourth, there's nothing like the local church when the local church is working right. So I was raised in church. I've spent my whole adult life leading in the church. And so I know the hangups and the flaws. I know the hurts. I've been through them. I've been a part of church splits. I've been betrayed. I've been let down by moral failings. But what I also know is that when the church is operating like it's supposed to operate, as a loving community growing in faith by being more and more loving towards one another, it's a beautiful thing. And I watch the church be the church. Our family was blessed by the church in ways I can't even describe. Believing neighbors served, they helped, they supported, they prayed, and I watched Jesus come alive in and through his people to all of us. See, Jesus wants you to be a part of a local faith community. He wants it for all kinds of reasons. Chief among them is he wants you to have a believing family. And guess what? Family's a lot like church. God's ideal for the church is to be a family, but families can have hang-ups. We all know that, falling outs, disappointment, anger, fighting. But if they work through those issues like the church should, the family can be the richest thing on earth. Finally, last lesson. The good news of Jesus answers the most important questions in life very, very well. See, since death is inevitable, we need answers. The message of Jesus gets down to the heart of confronting and dealing with death, which is something we all need to deal with. It gives us true hope, and that hope is based on the death and resurrection of Jesus. And these two events are presented as real historical occurrences. That's important because when it comes to death, we have to deal with it in real time and real space. And you'll notice that people automatically associate death with moral assessment. People gather around and they talk about what a good person the deceased was. We have that association, and we know innately what the Bible talks about. It says that it's given every man once to die and then the judgment. Something in us just tells us that. We also know, and when we were really honest about that fact, that we fall far short and we badly need forgiveness in light of that perfect justice that we're going to be facing. That's the cross. But then we have the hope of the resurrection, which presents Jesus' death as real, his body as real, and his resurrection as not just a nice idea, but a true overcoming of death itself. And when that moment comes, all of those things sound very religious up until then. Those things become really, really, really important. And when they're embraced, they bring this element of true hope and true joy into the grief. My stepdad's funeral was a rich and beautiful time that my mom told me when she was looking back on it, it's an actual happy memory that encourages her. And that happened because of the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus from the dead. It showed up in everybody in that space can kind of sense that somehow death did not have the final word for my stepdad. We all knew that, and we could celebrate that. So we were sad on one hand, but we were hopeful on the other. Everybody needs hope in the face of death, and the resurrection provides that in a real and true and historical and evidence-based way. I hope that helps. See you next time.